everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff and welcome to another Gideon Stuff adventure. I know that these videos aren't what a lot of you might be here for, but I really enjoy making these videos and I think that those of you that watch them really enjoy them, so I'm going to keep making them. You might be wondering where I'm filming. I'm sitting in my living room. My roommate recently decorated, so go us, I guess. We're upgrading. Also, you might notice this little thing on my face that's going to be distracting for the whole video. During another adventure, something fell on my hat and squished my glasses into my face, and they cut my nose right there. So, apologies for the disfigurement. Anyways, in today's video, we are going to be climbing a very well-known and prominent mountain here in Doña Ana County, New Mexico, called Bishop's Cap, or Bishop Cap, depending on who you ask. This is a very easy little hike. It's a beautiful one. This is one of those kind of low effort, high reward type of hikes. Definitely something that you can do in like an hour and a half, 2 hours. If you're not like me and constantly stop to look at awesome geologic features and fossils along the way. Now, just like all of my Gideon Stuff Adventure videos, I will be talking a lot about the geology of this particular area in this video because I find it to be fascinating. But of course, we're also going to have a lot of footage of me climbing the dang thing. Now again, this is not a super hard hike. You're going to ascend 1,000 feet and some change. You're going to start off at about 4,400 feet, and the summit of the mountain is at 5,419 feet. So not too bad. It does have some steep slopes and stuff, some loose rocks, so definitely be careful. But as far as being time consuming, it's not that bad. Now, Bishop's Cap is one of my favorite little areas in Doña Ana County. I love going over there. In fact, I have made several videos of the Bishop's Cap area. You've got Bishop's Cap, Pyramid Peak, Peña Blanca. There's a bunch of different canyons behind Bishop's Cap, and I absolutely love that whole area. So you guys will have seen I've done review cutting there. I've done other adventure videos in that area, but this is the first time that I've made a video going up to the peak. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And without any more preamble, let's go ahead and get started. Well, today Janelle and I are climbing Bishop's Cap.
Because we hate ourselves.
Because we hate ourselves? Because we hate ourselves, I guess. Let's go ahead and do it. So most of the lithologies out here are going to be limestone. There's also some shales interbedded through here, and it's all going to be primarily Pennsylvanian in age. So we're looking at passive margin ocean sediments on this mountain. One of the more striking features about the rocks around Bishop's Cap is that they're folded and twisted in all kinds of crazy ways. And most of that deformation came from the laramide. I think there might be a little bit of minor influence from the ancestral Rocky Mountains, but most of the deformation occurred during the laramide orogeny. And then after that, most of the faulting occurred during the main stages of Rio Grande rifting. So all the folds and stuff, primarily laramide. That's a thick-skinned deformational event lasting from about 75 million years ago to 45. And then a lot of the normal faults in the area are from the Rio Grande rift, which is about 30 million years ago to the present. And here's a little Bishop's Cap cave. Now, I've actually shown this in a previous video from a ways back, but I've been up in here quite a few times. Nice little overlook of the Mesilla Basin. Right over there, focus up camera, is Mesquite. Now, before we talk about the paleo history of this mountain, I want to talk a little bit about the structure of the mountain itself. Now, most people would consider Bishop's Cap to be the southernmost point of the Organ Mountains. There's a little bit of pushback to this, though. Some people consider it to be kind of its own thing between the Organ Mountains and the Franklin Mountains because lithologically it's a little bit different from the Organs, and it has some of its own deformational features that aren't really super correlated with the organs. Now, obviously, the name Bishop's Cap comes from the fact that this mountain looks like a bishop's cap. Who would have thought, right? So let's go ahead and talk about why it looks like that. And to do that, look what I've got here, ladies and gentlemen. Your boy got a whiteboard. I'm unstoppable now. It's honestly irresponsible of the universe to let me have this much power at my disposal. But here I've got a little drawing of Bishop's Cap, or as I have labeled here, Bishop Cap, because, you know, either or. Tomato, tomato, potato, potato. I think I messed that up. Anyways, as we look at this mountain, we can see that it's made up of a series of cliffs and slopes. These cliffs and slopes are formed by different kinds of rocks, and this all has to do with rock competency. See, the primary lithologies at Bishop's Cap, and by the way, lithology just means type of rock. The lithologies at Bishop's Cap are mostly limestones and shales, and these limestones and shales weather or erode differently. By and large, shale is less competent and it's more susceptible to erosion, and limestone is more competent and more resistant to erosion. We call these rocks competent and non-competent. So if we look at Bishop's Cap here, we'll see that these slopes, like that one, that one, that one, that one, these are all going to be shale. And I know that's upside down, and you know what? We're going to do that better. There. That's a little bit better. Shale on the slopes, limestone forms the cliffs. It's a cliff-forming unit versus a slope-forming unit, and that is actually exactly what geologists call them. Now, if you've driven out through the American West, this is kind of classic for a lot of our big mountains and our stratigraphy in general, is you'll see these ridges and these slopes. Think about the Grand Canyon, for example. Cliffs, slopes, cliffs, slopes. Now, this is mostly associated with sedimentary rocks. Normally, if you've got like a granitic pluton or you've got volcanic rocks like at the Organ Mountains, they just form big, kind of monolithic, craggy cliffs. We'll talk a little bit more about volcanic rocks and cliff forming, slope forming here in just a second. But that's basically what we're looking at here. While on this hike, it was kind of hard to point out when we were crossing through a shale and when we were crossing through a limestone. Or, I mean, not hard to point out, but the shale wasn't immediately obvious. We'd have these big limestone cliffs, and then we just have these slopes that tended to be pretty heavily vegetated. You know, so it'd look like this. Limestone, shale. You might also have noticed that a lot of the big boulders that we passed were all limestone. Well, this is because the limestone, when it weathers and erodes, it tends to come off in these big blocks that fall down the mountain, and the shale just kind of gets pulverized. It kind of just turns to dust. So you might be thinking, okay, how has the entire mountain not fallen apart? If the shale erodes so easily, how is there even any mountain there? And the answer is very, very simple. It's because the limestone is holding everything together. If we have a limestone layer and we have some shale underneath it, and actually let's do like this. Blah, 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 blah. So this is our shale, this is our limestone. This limestone is protecting this shale from being eroded. Only this stuff that's exposed can be eroded. And now this stuff is exposed because these rocks are tilted. And so instead of having everything horizontal, you've got a little bit of an angle to it. So some of the shale is able to peek through and get eroded. But also because some of it's exposed when the limestone falls. For example, if we have erosion working here, and this erosion is working its way in underneath this limestone slab, what's going to happen? This is going to become weak, and this limestone is being eroded. Of course, it's not eroding as fast as the shale, but it is being eroded. And so this is going to form a major weak spot. We're going to form cracks and stuff, and eventually this block is going to fall down. And then we're going to expose more of the shale, and we can start eroding that again. etc., etc., etc. And this causes landslides. In fact, I love landslides. Landslides are so much fun. And throughout Bishop's Cap, we can actually see a few places where there are ancient landslides. And once you learn how to identify old landslide scarps, it's so much fun. You just can't stop doing it. But there's a couple of different kinds of landslides. There's something called block fall, which is what this would be, which basically we've eroded underneath a big block, and this just topples and kind of rolls down. It can be a block slide where we erode underneath so much where instead of this cracking off like right here and just toppling, we might form a crack here that slides down the whole mountain. And we could have some more traditional types of landslides too, where we just have like a debris flow that flows down, things like that. A topple is another thing. Now, just like everything in science, we have a name for rocks to protect other rocks from getting eroded. So I'm going to give a little example here. In New Mexico, it is very, very common to see these cliffs that look kind of like this. We call them mesas, right? And typically, especially in the Rio Grande Rift, what you'll see is that the top of these mesas might be kind of a thinner layer of some dark rock. This is probably a basalt flow. And in the Rio Grande Rift, these are common because we've got a lot of volcanism. But underneath it, we'll have typically like a sedimentary rock, like a sandstone or a conglomerate. And sometimes you'll see that this sandstone conglomerate has different patterns in it, like maybe these have been tilted. Well, this sandstone is super, super susceptible to weathering. This stuff gets eroded and washed away with rivers very, very readily. But let's say that this stack of sandstone was deposited as basin fill in a valley 20 million years ago. Okay? And this basalt was erupted and it flowed over the top of these sedimentary rocks 5 million years ago. So, much younger rock on top of older rocks. This basalt is a little more resistant to the elements than this sandstone. And so it sits on top and just kind of holds all this in place. Any rain that falls, oh look at this, I've got a blue marker. Any rain that falls is going to hit this instead of seeping into this directly. And we call this here a cap rock. The limestone at Bishop's Cap, on the very top of that little knoll, and all the limestone throughout it really, is cap rock. Bishop's Cap, cap rock. Kind of makes sense, huh? It never gets old finding seashells on the tops of mountains. So those are the Franklins to the south down there. Portrios over there. And can't really see the Floridas today because it's too dusty. And there is a really nice little crinoid stem. Gorgeous. So, when we were walking along and finding fossils, a lot of time we're finding the fossils on these shale slopes because they're eroding out of the shale. The shale erodes so much easier than the limestone. So fossils that are in the shale are kind of released and they fall onto these slopes and mix in with the other rocks and boulders that are scattered around. So finding some pretty cool brachiopods up here. Oh wait, I just saw something weird. Oh, look at that. Oh yeah. Oh, we've got both valves on that one. Okay, so that's awesome. And that's one of my favorite types of brachiopods too. That's a Neospirifer. And so is this one. And this is actually one of my favorite brachiopods that I have ever found. Both valves, huge Neospirifer. This one's fantastic. Found this one first, which is a cool one, but I find a bunch of these ones. I do like that it's shiny. I think this is it's either a Compacta or what's that other genus? It starts with a P. I can't remember, but that's really, really nice. All right, Janelle just found some things that make me jealous, as frickin' always. Gosh damn it! This here is an absolutely massive crinoid. It looks like we've got a branch coming off there too. This is a really, really nice Neospirifer, but this one, holy crap, that is gorgeous. And there's a kind of a more regular one. Man, those are good. Those are awesome. Okay, I gotta keep my eyes peeled. No more videoing for me. Well, we dicked around quite a bit down in the fossil fields looking at fossils. Brought this one up here. I'm not going to take it with me because it's just a bryozoan. But when you find fossils like this, they're not fish. I have so many people tell me, oh look, I found fish scales. These are bryozoans. Look at that. And now we're going to climb this little cliff. There's going to be another slope, and then one more cliff to the top. The rocks that Janelle and I are walking through are limestones and shales deposited during the Pennsylvanian about 300 million years ago. Back then, New Mexico was a very, very different place. In fact, it would have been completely unrecognizable. In fact, you might not have even seen it at all because it was underwater. New Mexico at the time was home to vast coral reef systems and deep, muddy trenches. The majority of the fossils that you can find in these rock units are invertebrates, gastropods, brachiopods, mollusk bivalves, crinoids, corals, etc., etc. But these seas would have also been home to a plethora of vertebrates, sharks, bony fishes, armored fishes, marine reptiles. You're swapping out the rattlesnakes and jackrabbits of today for sharks 300 million years ago. That's pretty cool. All right, let's get a little more specific with our geology. There are a lot of different rock formations exposed in this area, but there are really only two formations that Janelle and I hiked through on our particular path from the bottom to the top of Bishop's Cap. Both units were Pennsylvanian in age, and both are very similar with their lithologies. But the older unit was called the La Tuna Formation, and the younger unit was called the Barino Formation. And both of these are made up of interlaid limestones and shales. Now, these are oceanic sediments. These were deposited in an ocean. The shales are mud. This is deep sea mud, and the limestones are coral reefs, essentially. Basically, this mountain tells us a story of ocean transgression and regression. As we're looking at these rock units, we can see the ocean getting deeper and shallower. So coral like very clean, shallow, sunny water. So the limestone represents lower ocean depths. And the shales are muds that collect kind of on the deep, dark parts of the ocean floor. And these shales are going to be made of a little bit of like silt and sediment that comes from the continent, but a lot of it's going to be like a kind of siliceous or calcareous oozes from the exoskeletons of marine critters. And the limestones are going to be almost 100% exoskeletons of coral. Coral use calcium carbonate, CaCO3, to construct their exoskeletons, and when they die, that stuff just kind of piles up. Now, when Janelle and I were doing our hike, we started off down here in the Barino Formation, and we're going to abbreviate this as PMB. PMB. We start out in the Barino Formation, and the top of Bishop's Cap is also PMB. That's our Barino Formation. And then somewhere in here, a couple of times maybe we crossed over our La Tuna Formation, which we're going to abbreviate as PML. All right, so remember, PML is older than PMB. And according to the law of original horizontality and the law of superposition, rock units are deposited horizontally. That's our law of horizontality. And older units are always under younger units because younger stuff is getting stacked on top. So how do we have older stuff in the middle of this younger stuff? What the heck happened here? I will put a link to a really, really great geologic map of this area in the description down below. But basically, if we're looking at this from this perspective that I drew at, north is going to be coming out at us. So that's north. We're looking south here. And this fault, there's this really big fault that goes through here, and it basically goes kind of like this. It's a big old normal fault. In addition to this fault, there's actually a lot of folding going on here. So if we were to cut Bishop's Cap in half, the inside would look something like this. You see that? So this is our little Bishop's Cap. And you can see here that all of these rock units are bending this way. And basically what that does is it kind of changes the way that these rock units are exposed. So if we were eroding just kind of like this, you might see that Bishop's Cap, this stuff is kind of protected from erosion by the cap, but then this area here is open to erosion, and so you can dig down and expose older units while still keeping this younger unit completely fine. The next big thing that we have to address is how the heck are we finding ocean life fossils up here? Heck, all the way at the top. This is 5,419 feet above sea level. How the heck did those fossils get there? Now, a lot of people think it's because the oceans were just deeper back then, which they were, but they weren't 5,419 feet deeper. Bishop's Cap as a mountain did not exist during the Paleozoic. It formed much, much later. I'm having to erase this to talk about the next thing. It sucks. Did such a good job on that little marker drawing. What a sad blank board. Alrighty, so during the Pennsylvanian, 300 million years ago, what is now southern New Mexico was on the continental shelf of North America. So, for those of you who might need a little bit of a refresher, you know what? I'm going to figure out a different angle to do this stuff. This might kind of sort of work. We're going to give it a try. Alright, so for those of you that may not know, a continental shelf is a part of the continent that is under the ocean. So, we can think about this like modern day California. Here's the land, here's where everyone lives, but the continental crust actually extends out underneath the ocean for quite a ways, and then eventually out here, it'll meet up with some oceanic crust, and you'll have your subduction zones and things like that. But during the Pennsylvanian, this was southern New Mexico, and the ocean levels would rise and they'd fall, and I have it leaning up against my light switches, so it just turned off the light. There we go. The ocean levels would rise and they'd fall, and when they were high, we're depositing shale. When they were low, we had coral reefs, right? You with me? Good. We have relocated again, and yes, that is the Last Supper. Anyways, so all the sedimentary rocks that make up Bishop's Cap were originally deposited horizontally. This is how all rock units are deposited, is horizontally. And then, in the millions and millions of years after their deposition, they were deformed, they were changed. The Earth is not static. The crust is constantly moving around and rearranging itself. And so these rocks don't stay like this for very long. Now, in the Bishop's Cap area, we see signatures from a couple different orogenies, or mountain building events. This starts with the ancestral Rocky Mountains, which was tectonic deformation that happened way, way back in the Paleozoic. But the more important stuff is a little more recent, namely the Laramide orogeny, which lasted from the late Cretaceous to the Oligocene, and the Rio Grande Rift deformation, which started about 30 million years ago and is technically still going today. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happened to these rocks. I got myself a whiteboard and markers, but an eraser was just too much, so a box of tissues is what we shall use instead. All right, let's set some context. So by the end of the Cretaceous, New Mexico wasn't underwater anymore. Towards the middle of the Cretaceous it was. So actually if we want to do middle Cretaceous right here, underwater we got the Western Interior Seaway. But starting about 75 million years ago, this little tectonic plate here called the Farallon Plate is subducting underneath North America. So here's California out here. We've got the subduction zone that's melting a lot of material and erupting all these volcanoes, blah, 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 blah. Well, this plate would continue subducting, and this is a little bit steeper right here than it should be. It was subducting kind of shallowly, so kind of more like that. And it was going underneath North America. And as it's moving, it's pushing the land up. It's pushing this continent upward. Now, pretty soon the Farallon plate went completely under North America, and it was just coasting underneath the continent. And as it's going east, it's pushing up mountains. And this deformation was what we call thick skin deformation. So, the Earth has layers. It's like an ogre, right? And this is kind of a very generalized cross-section of the Earth. So this very thin brown layer up here, that is our crust, that's our lithosphere. This is super thin and it's cold. The rocks up here are brittle. This is our asthenosphere. It's very hot, but these rocks are not quite liquid. A lot of people think that inside the Earth is liquid. Down here is our lower mantle. This is a little closer to liquid rock. This stuff here is more like plastic. It's hot and gooey, and you can kind of stretch it like taffy. So when the Farallon plate is going underneath North America, it's kind of riding right here, right? Hey guys, it is Editing Gideon from a few days later. So I'm currently working on editing the Bishop's Cap video, and I realized that when I'm talking about thick skin versus thin skin deformation, I make it seem like the asthenosphere is what's getting deformed and then later exposed, and that's just not true, okay? I really tried to make that diagram very simple and easy to digest for laymen, but I think I actually made it worse and just said, I think I gave you guys the wrong impression about a couple of things. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear that up. The asthenosphere is not what's getting deformed, right? Tectonic plates ride on top of the asthenosphere, and so when the Farallon plate is going underneath the North American plate, it's going between the North American plate and the asthenosphere, and eventually the Farallon plate falls off into the asthenosphere. The lithosphere, the crust of the Earth, is very thick, right? Continental crust is on average 15 to 30 kilometers thick. And so you have a lot of gradients through here. And the lower you get, the closer you get to the asthenosphere, or the upper mantle, the hotter you become, and the more ductile the rocks act. And this is because of temperature and also pressure. Solids move differently when they're hot and being compressed, right? The terms I should have used when describing thick skin and thin skin deformation is basement rocks versus cover rocks. And so basically cover rocks are like sedimentary rocks and also like volcanic rocks that kind of sit on top of your crystalline basement rocks. And when you're talking thin skin deformation, it's kind of just this top crust kind of sprinkling this seasoning on the Earth's surface that's getting deformed brittly, right? Because those rocks are all very cold. They're exposed to the atmosphere. When we're deforming something all the way down to the basement rocks, you're deforming all the rocks that have been sitting at depth for quite some time. And so these rocks, they're under a lot of pressure, they're pretty hot, they bend instead of break. So I hope that cleared it up. I try and keep these videos very friendly to the layman, but sometimes I realize that I sometimes simplify things so much that they're just not really correct anymore. So, apologies. Obviously, the crust, since it's hard, brittle, cold rock, when it is put under pressure, it cracks, right? And we call these cracks faults, and that's called brittle deformation. So this will crack like that. This stuff here, though, this is, again, it's like taffy. It kind of stretches and pulls. This has ductile deformation, so instead of cracking, it bends. Out around Bishop's Cap, we can see some mountains that have rock layers that are folded and bent like this. This is ductile deformation. These rock units were deformed while they were at depth. These rocks were not on the surface when this happened. They were deep underground in that ductile zone. They were hot enough to bend like taffy. It was only later in the preceding stages of the Laramide that this mountain was uplifted and these rocks were exposed to the surface. Okay, so I said it was uplifted during later stages of the Laramide. That's not 100% true. Some of that was uplifted during the Laramide, but a lot of the uplift actually occurred during Rio Grande rifting, which happened later. Now, I've talked about the Rio Grande Rift a lot. I love the Rio Grande Rift. It's a super important geologic feature here in New Mexico and the Southwest in general. But basically, North America is trying to pull apart through New Mexico. And that extension thins the crust and it causes faulting to happen. This is more of a thin-skinned deformation. So we're going to be seeing a lot more brittle deformation, a lot of faulting, especially normal faults. So right here we can see this black line is a fault going through some of our bended layers. And what we're seeing here is that it's displaced. So this line here should connect up here, but it's not. Because it's faulted, and notice it's going this way, that's going to be a normal fault going towards the rift. We're displaced now. And so that faulting pushes this stuff up and it drops this stuff down. And that is what pops up mountains and causes all kinds of really, really cool cuts and cracks and crevices all over the place. And in the Bishop's Cap area, there's a lot of fluorite mining. It's because of this kind of stuff that cracked open these rocks and allowed for these gaps that water could get in and precipitate economical minerals. And just like that, first set of cliffs conquered. Final stretch. Well, here are at the top, signed the climber's log. Look at that. Now we've done quite a bit of exploring down in this valley here. I like to call this Valley of the Mines. They're everywhere. You can also see some of that folding really, really spectacularly out there. Yeah, I'm going to climb up there in just a sec. Franklin's to the south. Portrios. That right there is Tortugas, the Doñanas, the Robledos. There's Bacacho Peak. Okay, I guess technically this is the top. So it's 5,445 feet, I believe. Yeah, right there is one of my favorite fluorite mines. I've made a couple videos down there. Some more of those tilted beds. The ridges that you can see, those are limestone, and the slopes between them are shale. Those are the organs. This here's Peña Blanca. Man, it's gorgeous. Having fun up there? No, she says as she keeps going. Oh, okay. I noticed when we were way down there, like in the arroyo, there was like a telephone pole. I think it came from here. Maybe we'll see it on the way back. There's the truck. But yeah, I think this kind of looks like there used to be like a little road there, which kind of makes sense because whatever they were doing with this thing, people had to come and get to it. So we'll go down this side and around and then back down. Less climbing. Just come straight to this limestone shelf, and then you'll come down basically the way you're coming, just kind of zig that way. And when you get down here to where I'm at, it's basically just a straight little shot to this little road looking thing. Here's a piece of what was up there. Still not sure exactly what it is. I'll have to do some research into that. But I think this is as good a place as any to do a pocket check. Pocket knife, CJRB shale. I was kind of hoping we'd see some of the shale units up here. Hoping we'd see some of the shale units here, but we kind of passed over them. Maybe we'll take a look here in a little bit, but you know, CJRB shale, looking at shale, pretty cool. And then for the fixed blade, changing it up a little bit. QSP Canary XL. Still trying to get my thoughts together on this thing. So far it's okay. It's okay. There's that telephone pole. There's the truck. Just right down here. Well, we made it down. It's a really delightful little hike, to be honest. Look at this sunset. Gonna be a pretty one. Yeah, really nice. About 3.5 hours overall, but we spent a lot of time looking at the fossils. Coming back, it took us probably, I don't know, 45 minutes, and even then we stopped and were like looking at all kinds of stuff and doing a little bit of exploring. But great little day hike. I mean, we did this in just an afternoon. In fact, we tried to do this earlier, but we had an interesting little adventure where when we were coming out here, we saw someone dump a dog. And so we scooped that dog up and took it to the shelter. Might go back and get that dog. I missed that dog. It was a good little dog. Alright, so I want to address the dog story real quick. Yeah, when Janelle and I went out there to climb Bishop's Cap the first time, we found a dog that had been dumped out in the desert. Do not do this. Okay, I am shocked that I have to say this, but what the hell, right? That dog was very thirsty. Such a friendly little dog too, though. Oh my goodness, she was so cute. Yeah, someone took her out there in the desert and left her to die. That's a dick move. That is a dick move. And there are a lot of things that I want to say that I'm not going to say because this is YouTube. But yeah, that sucks. So Janelle and I loaded that dog up, and we took her to a really nice little animal sanctuary here in Las Cruces. And had it been up to me, I would have kept that dog. Unfortunately, I can't have a pet in my house under my lease agreement, which sucks. Janelle, her roommate, already has a pet, so she couldn't keep it either. And yeah, I miss that dog. And I want to encourage you guys, if any of you are looking for dogs, go adopt one from a shelter, okay? There are way too many dogs that are being just abused and abandoned. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can rescue a dog. It doesn't have to be as dramatic as finding this dog out in the desert and taking it into its home. I'm so glad Janelle and I came along when we did, so we could grab that dog and help her out. Oh, and by the way, too, her feet were all cut up, no collar or anything either, and that was one of the reasons that we decided to really stop and help, was because she looked like she was in bad shape. But anyways, yeah, that sucks. I have some very strong words for whatever subhuman troglodyte dumped that dog out in the desert, but I'm going to keep them to myself for now. Well, how'd you think that went? I think that was pretty fun.
Gator light, watermelon.
The gator light's gone. It's been a good adventure. I still got mine to get to, and I left in the sun, so it's like 103 degrees.
Soup.
It's okay. I love me some
Soup!
Gatorade soup! But yeah, that was really fun. Glad we did that. Glad there's a little thing on top to climb. That was a lot of fun.
No rattlesnakes.
No rattlesnakes.
It's being snake season too, but I don't think it's because it's like all slopes. So that could be it.
Maybe. She doesn't trust me with rattlesnakes.
Yeah, because
anymore.
he done like Mojave, fucking Mojave. There's not gonna be no snakes. And what's slittering at my feet? Mojave green.
That's a story for another time. But yeah, that was a good little climb. I like that. And I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. I don't know how much I'm going to edit this video down. I did a lot of work with the whiteboard. I wrote a lot of stuff. Probably went on a couple tangents too many, so we'll try and cut things down. I don't necessarily script these videos. Maybe I should start. But I go on the adventure, and then I put together a loose plan about what I want to talk about, but maybe I'll start scripting it more, putting in some more info. But the main thing is with a lot of this stuff, as you might have noticed, it's not simple. A single mountain out here in the American West has so much complexity going on in its history that it takes a lot of work to synthesize it into even just a quick recap. But hopefully you learned something today. If you enjoyed this video, leave it a like, comment below, and subscribe. I've been Gideon, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.